The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus was going through a field of grain on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "See, your disciples are doing what is unlawful to do on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry, how he went into the house of God and ate the bread of offering, which neither he nor his companions, but only the priests could lawfully eat? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests serving in the temple violate the Sabbath and are innocent? I say to you, something greater than the temple is here. If you knew what this meant, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned these innocent men. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In every Catholic church in the world, we have the tabernacle. And close to the tabernacle, you have the sanctuary light, reminding us that Jesus Christ is present in the tabernacle. That's where we have the reserved Blessed Sacrament. Well, the genesis of that goes all the way back to the desert, to the people wandering. And whenever the manna was left over, they stored it in the Ark of the Covenant. And that's why our tabernacle is like the Ark. It has the dimensions of the Ark, which is beautiful. And of course, it's Christianized. It has the crosses on it. But the point I want to make is this. The Pharisees were nitpicking, but they were no match for Jesus. They never won an argument with Jesus. And Jesus pointed out that when David and his men were hungry in battle, they eat the holy bread that only the priest could lawfully eat. And they didn't break the law. That was praised, because they needed the nourishment for their battle. And Jesus points out the contradictory nature of the Pharisees. And he says, if they knew what was happening, he's greater than the temple, or greater than any law, but they did not accept him. Not only that, it got worse as time went on after the resurrection. By the time Matthew was writing his gospel, the Pharisees had turned completely against the Christians and were putting them to death. So Matthew has a real sharp edge towards the Pharisees and his confrontation with Jesus, because they missed the opportunity to recognize Jesus as Lord, recognize Jesus as the Messiah, as the fulfillment of the temple. So I think a practical lesson for today: for 900 years in the church, when people went to Mass, they brought their own bread with them. We didn't use the white host like we have today. People baked the bread, and it was substantial. It was a substantial bread. Not like the little bit of a host you get today, or the communion bread. It's almost nothing. So was the bread that David and his men ate. It was substantial. And it shows a little lack of education and a lack of appreciation for history. When you have priests telling people that to take communion in the hand is a mortal sin. That's pure rubbish. There are poor people, that are afraid to take communion in the hand during this pandemic, because some priest wrote in some crazy magazine or other, or some piece of paper, that you could only take communion in the hand. That person that wrote that knows nothing about the early church. In the early church, there was no communion in the tongue. It was only in the hand. The apostles, they took it in the hand, and Jesus said, "Take and chew. Take and chew. This is my body." When he spoke the bread of life, it was always about chewing. And we have this idea, that we can't chew the bread of life. Of course we can. It's meant to be bread. It's real bread. bread. And it was real bread in the early church. In fact, everyone would bake their loaf of bread and bring it and share it. So we really need to know our history and appreciate our history, and don't mind the rubbish that you hear. Paper never refused print. So if somebody is saying something that's not in line with the church's teaching in the catechism or in the liturgical books, then you should be skeptical of it. Doesn't matter whether it's coming from a priest or not. The Pharisees believed they knew better than Jesus. Jesus was the real truth, and they failed to recognize his teaching. And so many people today fail to recognize the significance of the Eucharist, the teaching of the church, and it's perfectly good to take communion in the hand. Okay? Amen?
Amen.
Hallelujah.